I'm divorcing you to marry my mistress. You can have Samantha, but the house and car are mine, Kevin said cheerfully over the phone. He's finally got the CEO position he'd been waiting for, so I'm no longer useful. And he wants the house and car too? What a greedy bastard. I've always said all I need is my daughter Samantha. I'm giving you the most important thing to you, he said, as if he's making some painful decision to give up our daughter and settle for the house and car. But this guy hasn't even been home since she was born. She'd only be in the way of his new life with his mistress, but he's trying to make it sound like he's doing me a favor. It makes my blood boil. Then, Samantha speaks into the speakerphone. Huh? Don't you know, Daddy? As Samantha reveals the truth, Kevin goes berserk. Talk about going from heaven to hell in an instant. I'm gonna hit this greedy, overconfident Kevin with a truth he won't be able to handle. It's too late for regrets now, he brought this on himself. My name's Rebecca Smith, I'm 45 and a housewife. I live with my husband and high school daughter, but since Kevin hardly ever comes home, it's basically just me and Samantha. I met Kevin through our dad's work connection. Whenever there was dinner, Kevin or his brother Tyler would drive my alcohol lightweight dad home. Kevin started pursuing me hard, and after a year of dating, we got hitched. I'm a gal who loves cars, I'd rather spend money on cars than clothes or makeup. Kevin's into cars too, so we'd go on drives and talk about taking our future kids to all sorts of places. I've got vivid memories of my folks taking me to the beach and camping in the car when I was little. Now I wanted to be the mom making tons of memories with our kid and Kevin. Both our families were thrilled when we tied the knot. It kinda solidified the work relationship too. When I got pregnant, everyone was over the moon. Course I was tickled pink too, feeling one step closer to my dream. Kevin's reaction really stood out, he must have seen my message at work 'cause he came rushing over with this massive bouquet. Couldn't wait till tonight, snuck out of work. Rebecca, thank you. Kevin's into these over-the-top performances, but I was so touched he was this happy. It made me feel good about marrying him all over again. Kevin's folks run a small company with about 30 employees. His dad's the CEO, and Kevin and Tyler work there too. As the eldest son, Kevin's got the pressure of being the next CEO, but since finding out about the baby, he's been working even harder. It's reassuring. Lately, he's been traveling a lot to expand his dad's company and develop new routes. He often gets home late. But I figured it was for me and the baby, so I was grateful. With Kevin away, his folks who live nearby were really sweet to me. They'd drive me to the hospital, bring over food, the works. No matter how much I tried to refuse, they'd say, "You've got to take care of yourself now." It was a blessed life, with just one thing bugging me. Kevin would take my car without asking. It's a luxury car I'd saved up for since I was a kid, part-time jobs, my salary all went into it. I treasured that car. Kevin's not on the insurance, and no matter how many times I told him not to, he'd sneak off with it. We're married, so it's our car, right? Put me on the insurance too. Besides, as the future CEO, I got a role in style. Turns out, Kevin didn't love cars, just luxury cars. He was just a show-off. He's got his own car but never uses it, just letting it gather dust. I'm the breadwinner here. If something happened to me, you and the baby would be in trouble. A luxury car is safer if there's a little fender bender. Just a little bump. Are you kidding me? You've no idea how much that car means to me. I pleaded. Is the car more important to you than me? I wanted to yell yes to that question. Since I couldn't drive while pregnant, I left my car at my folks' place. That's when Kevin got into an accident with my car. We got a call from the cops while his parents were over, so the three of us rushed over. At the station, there was Kevin, all cozy holding hands with some woman I'd never seen. Kevin! What the hell are you doing? His dad's angry yell caught Kevin off guard. He turned pale and quickly let go of the woman's hand. She took off running. I told you to break it off with that woman, but you're still at it. His dad, forgetting I was there in his anger, yelled this and smacked Kevin. "What's going on?" Looks like Kevin had been cheating for a while. And he'd been so happy about the baby. As I stood there shocked, his mom hugged me and kept apologizing. With everyone in the station watching, Kevin started apologizing to his dad, not caring who saw. "You're apologizing to the wrong person," his dad said, and Kevin turned to me, apologizing over and over. The woman was in the car with him, and the accident happened in a hotel parking lot. They both had minor injuries, but the front of the car was totaled. All this was too much for me. I felt a pain in my lower belly and collapsed. They rushed me to the hospital. There, they said I almost had a miscarriage. I was relieved the baby was okay, but I didn't know what to do next. Later, once I'd recovered a bit, we all sat down to talk, his parents, Kevin, and me. "Do whatever makes you feel better, Rebecca. We'd understand if you want a divorce. Kevin's done enough to deserve it." To his parents' words, Kevin added, "Rebecca, please forgive me. I absolutely don't want a divorce." If he really cheated, I don't think I can forgive him, but with the baby, it's not that simple. I think the baby survived because it wants to be born as my child. I asked Kevin, "Tell me everything, don't hide anything." "She's an ex-girlfriend. It's been over for ages. That day, we just happened to meet, and as friends, she was congratulating me on getting married and having a kid. We just happened to be making a U-turn there. I swear. Nothing shady happened. You gotta believe me." Would anyone believe they were just friends after seeing how close they were? Seeing I wasn't buying it, his parents chimed in with the whole story, figuring they had to come clean. The woman's name is Olivia, and she used to work at his dad's company. She married a guy from a client company and quit, but she and Kevin had been dating, and his parents knew about it. They were supposed to have broken up, but then this accident happened. "Really, we're just friends now. I swear on my life. You're the only one for me, Rebecca." All this groveling and swearing on his life, his over-the-top performance is just turning me off more and more. I know why Kevin doesn't want a divorce. It'd cut ties with my dad, and his chance at being CEO would go up in smoke. His dad brings that up too. "We're putting the CEO succession on hold. We've got Tyler too, you know." "Wait, Dad. That's a different issue, isn't it?" Kevin started begging his dad even more earnestly than he'd asked for my forgiveness. "It's not different at all. Our company survives on contracts from Rebecca's father. This could mean the end of the company. Rebecca's keeping quiet for now, but that won't last forever. Rebecca, please. Don't tell your dad. I have a duty to protect our baby. If the company goes under, I'll..." My dad's a department head at a big company, handling client relations. He's had a long relationship with Kevin's dad's company. I don't know what'd happen if I told my dad about this, but it all depends on me. I don't want to cause trouble for Kevin's dad, but I can't forgive Kevin. These feelings are at war inside me. Even so, I decided to give Kevin one last chance. He doesn't have to be a good husband, but I hope he can be a good father to our child. "There won't be a second chance." "Oh, thank you. I knew you'd understand, Rebecca." He jumped up and hugged me tight. His parents seemed way more sincere than Kevin's shallow words of thanks. Kevin seems to have really misunderstood why I forgave him this time. He thinks I love him so much that I couldn't bear to leave him. This made me realize how deeply loved I am. "You're the only one I love, so don't worry." His condescending tone makes me think, man, what an ego this guy. I just decided to wait for the day I could safely give birth. Once this kid's born, Kevin's bound to change and take his role as a father seriously. With that faint hope, I waited for the day. I safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. But Kevin didn't even show his face at the hospital until I was discharged, using work as an excuse. Not even getting a blessing from her father on her birth. Tears welled up as I looked at my little one sleeping in her tiny bed. Kevin's parents had the complete opposite reaction. "We've always wanted a girl." "Thank you, Rebecca. If there's anything we can do, just say the word." They were so excited the nurses had to tell them to keep it down, but I couldn't hide my joy that there were people truly celebrating this child's birth. His parents named her Samantha, and I vowed to make her happy no matter what. Kevin started being away from home more and more for work, but Samantha grew up healthy. To Samantha, Kevin was just like some uncle who'd show up at the house occasionally. Meanwhile, his parents were still going crazy over their granddaughter, even saying they'd build us a house. Kevin, who usually never comes home, rushed back from work all excited when he heard about this. I was in the middle of politely refusing his parents' offer, saying they'd already done so much for us that I couldn't possibly accept a house on top of that. But when Kevin heard this, he said in disbelief, "Rebecca, you really don't have any ambition. There's gotta be something wrong with you if you don't want a house. All I need is Samantha," I declared firmly to Kevin. Hearing this exchange, his dad made a suggestion. "As it happens, I've got some land my old man left me. I'll build it in my name, so there's no problem. This isn't for you, Rebecca, it's for Samantha. So it's fine, right?" His parents wouldn't back down, and Kevin's been over the moon about getting a house since earlier. "Come on, it's great. Let's graciously accept our house from them. Don't get the wrong idea. This is Samantha's house, period." Kevin got scolded by his dad for being at work and headed back to the office. His parents' offer was kind, but Samantha was still in elementary school. But his dad had already signed a contract with a home builder and came to consult me about the interior. Actually, when Kevin totaled my car in that accident, his dad had gifted me a higher-end model of the same car. "We'll dock it from Kevin's salary each month, so no worries. Rebecca, you just cut Kevin's allowance by that much." But in the end, Kevin said he needed money for work social obligations and cut our living expenses instead of his allowance. There's no way I could tell his dad about that, so I ended up having to pinch pennies. On top of that, Kevin started treating the car like his own, saying, "It's the same as if I'm paying for the car with my salary." The fact that my car got totaled seems to have vanished from Kevin's mind. Even though his dad told him, "You're absolutely not allowed to drive this car," Kevin would sneak out late at night to joyride. But when Samantha had a fever or got hurt, he never offered to use that car. Still, I'm deeply grateful for his dad's actions. So once again, I found myself relying on his parents' kindness. When Samantha started high school, she got busy with college entrance exam prep. Kevin would say, "Girls don't need an education and only give us the bare minimum for living expenses," so I'd started working a few years back. His parents building us a house meant no rent, so he cut our living expenses even more. Mistakenly thinking I loved him and knowing I wouldn't tell his dad or my dad anything, Kevin was doing whatever he wanted. He probably thinks I'm a devoted wife who believes in and patiently waits for her loving husband. We've been beyond repair for a long time now. Because Kevin's still with that woman. I expected that, but the moment he failed to fulfill his role as Samantha's father, my one hope, it was over. Kevin just sneaks in to take the car at night and brings it back in the early morning without seeing me or Samantha. He can't even be called family anymore, let alone a father. One day, Samantha said to me, "My close friend's from a single-mom household and has it really tough. When I think about that, I guess having a dad like ours is better than nothing." I've thought about divorcing Kevin many times, but I kept putting it off until Samantha finished elementary school, then junior high school, then high school. His parents' kindness and Samantha's practical nature have kept me going. Hearing Samantha talk like that made me wonder if I should keep up this facade of a marriage a little longer. Eventually, Samantha got into college, and I was thinking it was about time to decide what to do next. That's when his parents came to visit. "I've decided to retire. I'm handing the company over to Kevin, but Rebecca, don't you think it's about time you were free?" "You mean divorce? He's selfish, as you know, and it's clear you'll have an even harder time if you stick with Kevin as CEO. Actually, Kevin gave me this to pass on to you." Saying that, his dad put a divorce paper on the table with Kevin's section filled out. I was shocked by this unexpected turn of events. After his parents left, Kevin called me while I was driving. I pulled over to the shoulder and put him on speaker. "Hello? I'm on a business trip overseas right now." Kevin continued in a cheerful voice. "I'm gonna remarry my mistress, so let's get divorced. You can have a daughter, but the house and car are mine." He must have timed this with when his dad gave me the divorce papers. "Dad's on board with this divorce too. You got the divorce papers, right? Sorry to do this to you since you're so in love with me, but you don't have the right to refuse. He's got the CEO position he's been waiting for, so I'm no longer useful. And he wants the house and car too. What a greedy bastard. I've always said all I need is Samantha. I'm giving you the most important thing to you," he said, as if he's making some painful decision to give up our daughter and settle for the house and car. But this guy hasn't even been home since she was born. She'd only be in the way of his new life with his mistress, but he's trying to make it sound like he's doing me a favor. It's exasperating as always. Then Samantha, in the passenger seat, speaks into the phone. "Huh? Don't you know, Dad?" "Wah! Oh, Samantha!" Kevin let out a stupid-sounding yelp at Samantha's question. "The house and car are mine, you know? What are you talking about?" I can't believe Samantha's taking that seriously. That was just Grandpa putting on an act so your mom would accept the house and car. Nope. Grandpa had a lawyer over yesterday to put it in my name, you know? What? Kevin let out an even dumber-sounding yelp this time. I decided to explain so Kevin could understand from across the ocean. That's why your dad and mom kept saying, "Don't get the wrong idea, it's Samantha's house, remember?" I was there for the paperwork yesterday too, so there's no mistake. Is that true? Why would I lie about something so easy to check? You know your parents are people of their word, don't you? This is ridiculous. Why Samantha and not me? What's the point of a kid like Samantha getting it? The CEO position, the house, the car. It should all be mine. Kevin was screaming half-crazed on the other end of the line. How greedy can he be? Doesn't he feel ashamed in front of his daughter? Then the next moment, Kevin said something unbelievable. "Fine, I'm not giving you Samantha. I'll just divorce Rebecca and take Samantha." What a predictable personality. As Samantha and I were chuckling, Olivia started making a fuss on the other end of the line. "What? That's not what we agreed on. I absolutely don't want any kids. We don't have a choice. This is the only way to get the house and car." He probably thinks he's whispering, but we can hear their conversation loud and clear. "Hey, Dad. We can hear everything, you know?" "Huh? Maybe there's something wrong with my phone?" "Yeah. That's weird. Must be 'cause I'm overseas." You think I'd want to go with you after hearing all that? Even before that, there's absolutely no way I'd ever go with you. I mean, I absolutely don't want to. Don't say that. If you come with Dad, you'll be the CEO's daughter. Isn't that awesome? He seems to think he's dangling bait, but Samantha ain't gonna fall for that. He doesn't know a thing about his own daughter. Listen up. I can do whatever I want with the house and car. If I sell the house and start a business, I won't just be a CEO's daughter, I'll be the CEO myself. Ain't a high school CEO kinda cool? Wait. Samantha, let's calm down, okay? First, let's take it easy. Why don't you calm down, Dad? You're being super lame. Don't do anything rash, got it? You hear me? I mean it. Samantha silently pressed the end call button. Our phones kept ringing after that, but we ignored them all. After all, we're busy preparing to move. The next morning, I was woken up by persistent doorbell ringing. When I answered, it was Kevin, who seemed to have come straight from the airport. Samantha! Where's Samantha? Kevin's voice echoed in my groggy head, making for an unpleasant start to the morning. Not wanting to disturb the neighbors, I opened the door. If you're looking for Samantha, she's at your dad's. She's been staying there since last night. Why don't you go there? Of course, there's no way he could go to his dad's and continue yesterday's conversation. Kevin finally noticed the boxes piled up all over the room and asked. More importantly, you're moving out of this house, huh? Smart choice. Don't worry, I'll take responsibility and raise Samantha in this house. You think you can raise Samantha? Of course. Maybe not if she was a baby, but Samantha's finished high school and an adult now. I asked Kevin, who was puffing out his chest and answering arrogantly without knowing anything. So, you can pay for college tuition too? Pharmacy school is gonna cost quite a bit. Huh. I never agreed to college. I told you women don't need education. You like dumb women, don't you? Like that mistress of yours. Samantha chose to become a pharmacist so she could support herself even if she married a loser like you. What did you say? You're calling me a loser. Tell me how I'm a loser. He's probably never been called a loser by anyone before. His face is so red it looks like steam might come out. If you're asking how, I'm not sure where to start. Hee hee, your entire existence is trash. What's so funny? Stop laughing. You drove my car around, ended up in an accident with your mistress, and acted like the house and car your dad bought us are thanks to you. You don't even pay proper living expenses. You say you're gonna remarry your mistress and take in a daughter you don't give a damn about just to get the house and car. How is any of this not being a loser? There's plenty more to say about Kevin being trash, but it'd take all night to list it all. Still, it seems the damage to Kevin was enough. He's shaking his tightly clenched fists. Since it's all true, he's got no way to fight back. More importantly, have you been to the company? As the new CEO, shouldn't you go check out the company your dad handed over to you? What do you mean? You'll see if you go. Sensing something was up, Kevin seemed bothered by my meaningful words and headed to the company. 30 minutes later, Kevin came back out of breath. This is bad. There's no one at the company. I can't get in touch with Dad or Mom. What's going on? Do you know something? Your dad left this with me for you. I handed Kevin the letter his dad had left with me, knowing he'd definitely stop by here. Start from scratch. What the hell is this? It means exactly what it says, doesn't it? Don't mess with me. What happened to the employees? You know something, don't you? Tell me. All I know is that everyone moved to Tyler's new company where he's the CEO. His dad had given up on Kevin long ago. He had no intention of making him the successor since finding out about the affair with the mistress, but he gave Kevin one last chance when he married me. But even that chance disappeared when he got into an accident with my car. Tyler was originally planning to start his own business and happened to consult with his dad around this time. Kevin had forced clients to entertain him, demanded kickbacks, and brought his mistress to meetings pretending she was his secretary, earning him a bad reputation. So they decided to move the foundation to Tyler's new company, which was run by a capable and well-liked person. His dad told my dad everything and apologized, but my dad said business and private matters are separate. He promised to continue doing business with Tyler, who he could trust. Originally, they were planning to shut down the old company at this point, I told Kevin. Then, why didn't they close the company then? It was your dad's kindness, thinking you, me, and Samantha would be left out on the street. You were hanging on by a thread thanks to me and Samantha. No way! Kevin was the only one who didn't know anything. After everything, from employees to clients, was moved to Tyler's new company, the old company became just a paper company with only the name left. His dad told Kevin, there are complaints from clients and employees, so don't come to the office, and made him work remotely to keep him away from the company. Kevin was happy to goof off, so he didn't know anything. So, Dad handing over the CEO position to me and telling me to divorce Rebecca was all planned. Planned? No way. Your mom and dad told me many times that I should divorce you. But I decided to put up with it until Samantha got into college for her sake. When Samantha got into her chosen school, your dad said, "Leave the rest to me." Dad said it'd be too pitiful to make Rebecca suffer anymore, so divorce her. That was the condition for handing over the CEO position. Hearing that, Kevin apparently signed the divorce papers without a second thought. The plan was to hand over the CEO position of the paper company and complete the move while he was away on a business trip overseas, but Kevin came back. Isn't it great? You got the CEO position you wanted. What am I supposed to do with a company that has nothing? Why don't you start from scratch like your dad said? Start a new life by remarrying your mistress? When I said I'd take Samantha, the remarriage and everything was called off. It would have ended up the same anyway since he couldn't get the house or car. And he's just the CEO of a paper company, so it's even worse. I've been thinking, how about the three of us, me, Rebecca, and Samantha, start over here? I'll turn over a new leaf and work hard for the family. Then if we get Rebecca's dad to talk to us and let us do business again, I think the company can grow. How do you even come up with that idea? First off, my dad neither trusts nor values you. Besides, I've already submitted the divorce papers, so we're strangers now. Why'd you submit them? Because I wanted to become a stranger as soon as possible. I signed the divorce papers as soon as I got them from his dad and submitted them. But this guy doesn't seem to get it even after all this talk, and he's already turning into a creepy Romeo. It must have been tough, because I had a mistress, right? I'm sorry. I betrayed Rebecca who loved me so much. But I swear I'll only love Rebecca from now on. So, let's get married again. You're enviably positive in your thinking, aren't you? When that accident happened, it wasn't just your dad who gave up on you, it was me too. For 18 years, I've felt nothing but contempt for you. And that poetic way of talking is gross. That's not true, right? You're just being stubborn, right? Think whatever you want, but neither Samantha nor I will have anything to do with you from now on. Your mom and dad too. Even after all this, he seems unable to accept that he's being rejected. Kevin keeps repeating stories that suit him over and over. It's about time for the movers to arrive. As I look at the clock wondering if they'll come soon, the moving truck arrives right on cue, followed by Samantha coming home. Samantha! Daddy missed you so much! Kevin's face switches from anxious to bright as he runs up to her, but... Why's Dad here? Samantha! Hey, why don't we live here together? The three of us, Daddy, Mommy, and you? What are you talking about? We're gonna rent this place out and use the rent money for my tuition. Huh? What do you mean? Where are you moving to? What's gonna happen to me? Kevin kept asking questions, completely flustered. Anywhere's fine. But listen. Mom worked so hard and paid for everything, including my cram school. Now it's time for Mom to relax and be happy, so don't get in the way. That's right. We'll never be happy with you around. Don't say that. Please. Take me with you. Kevin started his signature kowtowing, not caring that the movers were there. Your cheap groveling's worthless. I'm sick of seeing it. What am I supposed to do? Disappear? That's all you can do, Dad. Even so, Kevin kept pestering me and Samantha, but the loading was done, so we got in the car. At least leave the car. Kevin chased after us, but we ignored him and drove off. We're gonna sell this car too. It's still in my name from when his parents gave it to us, but I don't want to drive a car that Kevin and his mistress used so much. Samantha felt the same way, so we told his parents and put it up for sale, then returned the money to them. Of course, they didn't want to take it, but we convinced them by saying we wanted an equal relationship from now on. Actually, that house is still in his dad's name. They tried to change it to Samantha's name, but we both politely declined. That day, Samantha got mad at Kevin on the phone and accidentally lied that it was in her name. I understood how she felt and went along with it. We paid for Samantha's tuition with money we earned working at the same company, me as a full-time employee and Samantha part-time. It's a good memory now. His parents would have helped with tuition or anything if we'd asked, but we didn't want to end up like Kevin. So we're still working the same way now. After that, Kevin was apparently staying at the company. The land and building belonged to his dad, so he was told to move out or pay rent within a month. He struggled to keep the company going alone. But all the old clients turned him away, and no one would deal with him. He went to his parents' house for help, but they completely ignored him. He apparently came back crying. He ran out of money and had to declare bankruptcy, giving up the CEO position he'd been so obsessed with. Now he's apparently living in that compact car. With no address, it'll be hard for him to rent a place or get a job. Kevin visited his brother Tyler and said some nonsense like, "Let me work for you too, I'll be fine as vice president." That's when Tyler explained to Kevin why he started his own business. He knew Kevin would just hold them back if they kept working together. As long as Kevin was around, the company had no future, so he started his own. He told Kevin he wouldn't hire him even as a regular employee and cut ties with him. Kevin harassed his ex-mistress. She reported him to the police, leading to an ending you'd never expect for a couple that was supposed to remarry. This is how he lost not just us, but his parents, siblings, and mistress too, ending up all alone. But he brought it all on himself. Since then, I've been living happily with Samantha in our new condo. It's not much different since it was basically just the two of us before, but with that weight off our shoulders, we feel more peaceful every day. One day, Samantha brought her boyfriend to introduce him to me. It was that kid from the single mom family she'd mentioned before. I was surprised because I thought it was a female friend, but he'd been supporting Samantha all along. They both said they felt they had to be responsible, using their fathers as examples of what not to be. They want to study hard in college, become working adults, and get married once they're stable. Looks like even a loser dad came in handy in an unexpected way. We still have dinner with his parents sometimes, and no one ever mentions Kevin. We just enjoy our time together. My goal now is to save up a bit more money and buy a car to go on drives. I want to forget everything and cruise along the coast. Samantha and I are looking forward to that day. I've got something important to talk about. What? Oh, you did say you had a lot to talk about when you got back, didn't you? Yeah. I want a divorce. What? Why all of a sudden? This is too sudden and too one-sided, isn't it? While undergoing treatment for cervical cancer, my husband suddenly demanded a divorce. I was completely panicked, not understanding the reason for the divorce at all. He did explain the reason for the divorce to try and clear up my confusion, but it was an utterly unreasonable one. It's because I've found someone I love more than you, understand? It seems he plans to leave me for a 19-year-old woman. I don't mind if we get divorced. But divorce isn't like a romance, where you can just say goodbye and that's that. I understand what you're thinking. But you can't just decide on a divorce right now, can you? Let's talk this through. Why? No matter how much we talk, my feelings won't change. Just give up and let's get a divorce. It's not about that. If the love is gone, we can't stay married, can we? I won't do anything. He started to act out, thinking he was some kind of hero, protecting the woman he loves. I was already irritated at being presented with a divorce for such an unreasonable reason, but being talked to as if I were some monster obstructing his love path only made me more irritated. I'm sure if he says one more irritating thing, I won't be able to hold back. You know you're at a higher risk of early childbirth and miscarriage after the surgery for cervical cancer, right? That's basically the same as being infertile. No value in a woman who's infertile. I'm gonna remarry a cute 19-year-old. He stepped on a massive landmine. These were words that should never be said, not here, not anywhere. I'll pack my bags. I decided to not have any discussions and leave the house. At that moment, if he had calmed down even a little and tried to stop me, he wouldn't have ended up regretting it so much. 3 days after I left the house, I was called to the hospital because there was something about my husband. Since the divorce hadn't been finalized, I reluctantly headed to the hospital. When I arrived, there he was, sitting in a chair, frozen, his face pale as a ghost. "I'm glad you could come right away. What's wrong? Did something happen?" "Yes. Your husband, actually." He collapsed to his knees. It seems a massive divine punishment had come down on him. "My name is Michelle. I'm a 27-year-old office worker. I married Kyle last year, and it's almost been a year since we got married. Kyle works at a supermarket as an employee, taking care of the produce section. We met 3 years ago, at his workplace, but my first impression of him wasn't very good. What should I make for dinner tonight? I'm too tired to think. Maybe I'll just buy some cheap vegetables and make a stir-fry like usual." Exhausted from work, I decided on the dinner menu in my head. Being familiar with the supermarket, I knew exactly where everything was. I headed straight for the stable and cheap vegetables. On the way, I noticed that cabbage was on sale, which stopped me in my tracks. I can't finish it by myself, though. "It's a good deal, isn't it? The price goes back tomorrow, so you'd better buy it now. It is good for your skin because it has vitamin C, and it's also good for your bones because it contains vitamin K and calcium." "Oh, yes. Thank you." I wasn't expecting to be approached by a store employee, so when Kyle suddenly spoke to me from behind, I jumped. Turning around, he continued to extol the virtues of cabbage to me, ignoring my bewildered expression, like he was a sales clerk in a clothing store. Not knowing how to respond, I nodded politely, put a head of cabbage in my cart, and walked away. After that day, whenever Kyle saw me in the store, he would always recommend vegetables to me. Eventually, he started talking about things other than vegetables, like his job and his life, and began asking about mine, eventually inviting me out for a meal. Essentially, Kyle was hitting on me. The idea of being hit on by a man who was hitting on a customer during work hours left a bad impression on me. However, he kept inviting me out, so on a whim, I decided to go out to eat with him once. I thought my husband was a bit frivolous for hitting on me, but when we went out to eat, he was surprisingly kind and sincere. My impression of him changed drastically, and I started to become interested in him, which led to us dating. After we started dating, I asked him why he approached me. A few weeks after I started working at the supermarket, I saw Michelle for the first time and it was love at first sight. I decided then that I had to talk to her the next time I saw her. You can't just do nothing when you fall for someone, even if it's a customer, right? Turns out, Kyle wasn't frivolous, he was passionate about love, the kind of guy who gets tunnel vision when he likes someone. After 2 years of dating, we got married last year. We've been married for a year now, so we were thinking it might be time to start trying for kids. Then, a significant event occurred. One day, I was in agony in the bathroom. At first, I thought it was just my regular period, but the amount was abnormally heavy. I also started bleeding at times other than my period, and there was blood in my urine. You've been feeling sick a lot lately, haven't you? Are you okay? I think I'm okay, but maybe you're lacking iron. Why don't you try eating more spinach and prunes? I think nutrition is important, but it's not just that. Maybe I should get checked out at the hospital. It still hurts. When I came out of the bathroom, Kyle looked worried and spoke to me. However, my stomach started hurting again soon after, and I had to retreat back to the bathroom. Lately, this has been happening a lot. Feeling that something was definitely wrong, I decided to go to the hospital for a checkup. Some people believe they'll never get seriously ill. I was one of those people. And often, it's exactly those people who suddenly find themselves with a serious illness. I became one of those people. You have cervical cancer. Me? But I'm still young. Cancer? Cervical cancer is actually more common in younger women, starting in their late 20s. Hearing I had cancer at the age of 27, I was disheartened, feeling as if my energy was drained and my back started to hunch like an old woman's. However, the doctor gave me some hopeful news, and by the time I left the examination room, I was standing a bit straighter. But the thought of having to tell Kyle weighed heavily on me, and by the time I got home, my back was hunched over again like an old woman's. The night I found out I had cervical cancer, I was nervously eating dinner, thinking about how to tell Kyle. Trying to find the right moment, I couldn't taste my dinner and spoke less than usual. Sensing something was different, Kyle put down his bowl and chopsticks and asked me, "You went to get your test results from the hospital today, right? How did it go?" At Kyle's question, my heart felt as if it had been punched. I put down my bowl and chopsticks and braced myself. "I have cervical cancer."
Cancer? But you're so young.
Cervical cancer can occur in younger people too.
I don't know much about cancer, but can't they just remove it with surgery? If they remove the uterus, does that mean you can't have kids anymore?
Don't worry. That's not the case. Surgery is needed, but the disease hasn't progressed too far, so they don't need to remove the whole uterus. So, even though it's cancer, treatment is possible, and I can still get pregnant.
Really?
That's a relief. The illness is tough, but it's a saving grace that treatment and pregnancy are possible. Hearing my words, Kyle picked up his bowl and chopsticks again, reassured. And seeing his expression, I also felt relieved and continued explaining while holding my bowl and chopsticks. Cervical cancer occurs near the entrance of the uterus, and the surgery involves cutting out a cone-shaped piece of the cervix with a laser scalpel. So, the shape will change after the surgery. Because of the change in shape, there's an increased risk of preterm birth and miscarriage. But don't worry too much. The risk increases, but it doesn't become extremely high.
Hey, we're eating. Even if it's important, can we not talk about surgeries and miscarriages right now? It makes it hard to eat.
Oh, sorry. Relieved by Kyle's reaction, I cheerfully continued explaining, which made him pause his meal again. I decided to continue eating quietly, but the tension was no longer present on my face. The following week, I was admitted to the hospital for surgery. It was supposed to take about 2 to 3 weeks, but that was just an estimate. Depending on the situation, I could be discharged earlier or it might take about a month. Thinking I might be hospitalized for about a month, I naturally worried about Kyle's well-being as his wife.
Make sure you eat properly. Don't fall into an unbalanced diet, okay?
I always eat with balance in mind. It's you who doesn't eat vegetables, right?
Make sure to wake up on time in the morning and not be late for work.
I'm the one who gets up earlier since my work starts sooner. You're the one who ends up being late even when I try to wake you up. No matter what I worried about, it always seemed to come back like a boomerang. It appears there's no need to worry about Kyle being on his own. Once hospitalized, I felt anxious about undergoing major surgery for the first time, and I couldn't sleep at all on the first night. The next day, sensing my anxiety, Kyle visited me and avoided talking about the illness or surgery. Right now, we're getting a lot of new student workers. A college guy started to produce, and 3 students joined the cashier team. Oh? Was one of them a freelancer? I hardly go over to the registers, so I forgot. Maybe I'll check next time.
Weren't you saying the young workers tend to quit soon?
Hopefully, they stick around this time. That's more of an issue with the meat section. The work there is tough, so I guess it can't be helped. I've never felt so grateful for such ordinary conversations. Talking to Kyle made me feel as if I were at home, and it helped to calm my nerves. However, on the day of the surgery, I felt overwhelmingly anxious. The nurse tried to calm my nerves with kind words, but as the time for the surgery approached, I gradually couldn't understand what she was saying due to anxiety and tension. By the time I was headed to the operating room, I started feeling so scared that I wanted to run away. But after entering the operating room and some time had passed, I realized the surgery was already over. About 6 hours had passed, but all I had were vague memories. The surgery, which I was so scared of, was over before I knew it, thanks to the general anesthesia. It was somewhat anticlimactic. Now that the surgery was over and I felt relieved, I was somewhat excited about how I would share this first surgery experience with Kyle. However, Kyle didn't visit the hospital on the day of the surgery or the day after. There was no response to my messages either. Why wouldn't he at least send a message? 5 days after the surgery, just as I was starting to feel annoyed, Kyle finally visited the hospital.
How are you feeling? Wow, you look much better than I thought. How long do you think it's been since the surgery? You didn't reply to any of my messages.
I'm alone at home now, so I have to take care of everything while working, you know? I plan to contact you, but I always end up falling asleep.
Well, that's okay. It looks like I'm recovering smoothly, and it doesn't seem like I'll be hospitalized for a month. That's good to hear. Are you getting enough nutrition? After surgery, your body is weak, so you should eat soft leafy vegetables like Napa cabbage or cabbage, which are high in water content. Make sure to eat them. I eat what's given to me at the hospital, so there's not much choice there.
I had planned to express all my dissatisfaction about Kyle not visiting the hospital, but his words reminded me of the inconvenience I was causing him, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything harsh. While Kyle is capable of living on his own, that doesn't mean it's not a burden. I felt a strong desire to be discharged as soon as possible. However, after that visit, Kyle stopped coming to see me again. Even when I contacted him, there was still no reply, as usual. I understand that work and household chores can be overwhelming, but over a week passed without any response from Kyle. How are you feeling?
Is discharge still a ways off? Wait a minute. I get that work is busy and household chores are tough, but over a week without any word is too much, isn't it?
No, I've been feeling off myself.
Where? You look perfectly fine to me.
It's not that I feel sick or anything. Kyle started fidgeting as if he was holding back from going to the bathroom, his hands covering his lower half. He seemed uncomfortable, but I was curious about what he meant by feeling off, so I asked directly.
Why are you holding yourself like that? Did something happen?
Well, I've got something like a rash down there.
You what? That sounds like...
I couldn't help but suspect that he might have caught a disease from somewhere, and my gaze towards Kyle became suspicious. He immediately understood what I was thinking and started making excuses.
Don't get the wrong idea. It's not like that. Guys can get rashes from sweat and chafing. I just didn't want to say anything because it's embarrassing and I didn't want you to think I'm dirty. Really? You haven't been doing anything you shouldn't have, right? Of course not.
It's hard to imagine he'd start an affair while his wife was in the hospital undergoing surgery. Believing in Kyle's words, I decided to trust him.
I'll trust what you're saying, Kyle, but just to be safe, you should get it checked out at the hospital.
It's fine. It's just skin down there, right? If I improve my protein metabolism with vitamin B6, the rash should disappear. I'll just eat some bananas and stay quiet.
No, you need to see a doctor.
No way. It's embarrassing to have that area examined. Kyle started fidgeting again, possibly due to itching, his hand moving around his lower half. While I think he should see a doctor, I don't know much about men's issues down there. If Kyle says it's okay, then it must be okay. Not wanting to talk about such matters in the hospital, I decided not to bring up the topic anymore. Another week passed. Still no word from Kyle, and the next time he came to the hospital was just before I was discharged. Hey, I've come to pick you up. Oh, are you the doctor? My wife has been in your care. As I was receiving instructions for aftercare from the doctor, Kyle arrived. Since he hadn't visited me at all, I saw it as a good opportunity for payback.
Doctor, listen to this. My husband has developed a rash down there and refuses to see a doctor because he's embarrassed. He thinks he can cure it by eating vegetables. Hey, we don't need to talk about that right now.
A rash?
That does sound concerning. What does it look like?
At first, it was like prickly heat, but lately, it's gotten worse, kind of bumpy, almost like cauliflower, I guess.
That's something that should be checked out immediately. See, the doctor says you should get it checked out right now. Today's the day my wife is being discharged, and we have a lot to discuss at home. I'll get it checked tomorrow or sometime after. Make sure you do. It's important to get it checked out soon.
Now that the doctor had insisted, Kyle had no choice but to go to the hospital, no matter how embarrassing or reluctant he was. Though I felt a bit embarrassed discussing Kyle's issue with the doctor, the embarrassment was surely greater for him. Serves him right. Feeling somewhat lighter, I left the hospital with Kyle. Though I had been hospitalized for only about 3 weeks, it felt like I hadn't been home in much longer. Excited to be back, I energetically plopped down on the living room sofa, my usual spot. Instead of sitting next to me, Kyle sat across the table, facing me.
Michelle, there's something important I need to talk about. What? Oh, you did say you had a lot to talk about when you got back, didn't you?
Yeah.
I want a divorce. What? Why all of a sudden?
After the surgery and being discharged, still needing treatment, Kyle dropped a bombshell I hadn't anticipated. I was so stunned by his words that I became speechless, my mind a whirlwind of confusion. Kyle continued to explain, trying to clear up my confusion.
Remember I mentioned a new cashier started? I've fallen for her. It happened while you were hospitalized, so I decided to tell you once you were discharged. I thought it might affect your recovery if you were stressed. No, isn't this too sudden and too one-sided? It's not like I did anything wrong, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You haven't done anything wrong. It's just that I've found someone I love more than you. Please understand.
Hearing Kyle's words made my head spin. I knew Kyle's love was passionate and intense, focusing solely on the person he loves without seeing anything else around him. But I never thought that this kind of love would continue after marriage, leading him to pursue someone new straight away.
The new cashier started around the time I was hospitalized, right? So, you were having an affair with her? That's why you never visited me at the hospital. Did you catch your illness from her? Don't get it wrong. Indeed, I didn't go to the hospital because I fell for her. But we haven't started dating yet. We decided to wait until I had broken up with you properly. So, there's been nothing physical between us.
Kyle looked at me with clear, earnest eyes. He probably wasn't lying, and wanting to date someone he likes after breaking up with me does seem fair. However, it's overwhelmingly unreasonable. Kyle is romanticizing his actions through a filter of passion, but it boils down to him wanting to switch to someone he deems better than me.
What's the name of this person you've fallen for?
Kelly.
She's a student, right?
How old is she?
19. Is she your type? I didn't fall for her because of her face, but I think she's pretty.
So, it was as I thought. Men's thoughts are simple. Younger and prettier is better. Even so, looking at passionate and straightforward traits from a distance, they seem so disheartening. I feel embarrassed now for having been pleased with Kyle's passionate love. I'm okay with divorcing a husband who justifies his shady actions with passionate love. But divorce isn't as simple as saying goodbye like in a romance. There's a lot we need to discuss.
I understand your point, but you can't just decide on a divorce right now, can you?
Let's talk about it. Why?
No matter how much we talk, my feelings won't change. Just give up and let's get a divorce. It's not about that. Divorce isn't something you can just do on a whim, right? If the love is gone, we can't stay married, can we? You're not planning to do something to Kelly, are you?
I won't do anything.
Well, maybe she'll have to be involved in our discussions. So, you were gathering information about her, planning to harm her, by asking her name and age.
Kyle's eyes remained clear and sincere. He must think he's some kind of hero, protecting the one he loves. Being proposed a divorce for such an unreasonable reason already irritated me, but being treated as if I'm some monster in his path of love made me even more furious. If he says one more thing to irritate me, I'm sure I won't be able to hold back.
You know you're at a higher risk of early childbirth and miscarriage after your surgery for cervical cancer, right? That's basically the same as being infertile. No value in a woman who's infertile. I'm gonna remarry a cute 19-year-old. Kelly won't have any problem having kids.
Kyle stepped on a massive landmine. These were words that should never be said, not here, not anywhere.
I'll pack my bags.
I decided not to have any discussions and leave the house. If only Kyle had become a bit more rational and stopped feeling like a hero, he wouldn't have ended up regretting so much. 3 days after I left the house, the divorce was still a work in progress, but preparations were moving forward. It seemed like the divorce would be finalized smoothly. That was the plan, until a call from the hospital changed everything. I thought the call was about my health, but they wanted me to come to the hospital immediately because there was something about Kyle. The hospital wasn't aware of our ongoing divorce proceedings. Since I didn't answer calls at home, they must have called my cell phone. I thought about ignoring it, but since we were still technically married, I felt obligated to go to the hospital. Reluctantly, I decided to head to the hospital.
Good, you came quickly. What happened? Is something wrong?
When I arrived at the hospital, Kyle was sitting in a chair, frozen, his face pale as a ghost. Having been in a similar situation at the hospital myself, I somewhat understood. This usually means the discovery of a serious illness.
Does Kyle have a serious illness? Yes. He had abnormalities in his lower body, and upon examination, it appears to be penile cancer.
Cancer? My gaze shifted from the doctor back to Kyle. He must have heard it before, but hearing the word cancer again from the doctor's mouth seemed to make his body tense up even more.
Is penile cancer like cervical cancer more common in younger people? No, it's more common in older individuals, over 60. It's quite rare compared to other cancers, as rare as becoming a millionaire at a casino. The chance of getting it at a young age is extremely low, like being struck by lightning in the middle of a city full of tall buildings.
Is that so? Knowing Kyle had drawn such an unlucky lot, I couldn't help but let a smile slip despite understanding it wasn't a laughing matter.
So rare to get such a cancer.
What causes it?
It's hard to say definitively, but human papillomavirus is a common cause. Yes, it's the same as cervical cancer.
So, did I give cancer to Kyle?
That's not necessarily the case. It can be transmitted through sexual activity, but it's also possible for men to contract it. So, it might have been transmitted from your husband to you, or both of you might have already been infected. Normally, the immune system handles it without issue, but in some cases, it can lead to cancer.
Is Kyle's cancer treatable?
Yes, similar to your cervical cancer, it can be treated with surgical removal.
That means... I looked at Kyle's face again, and my smile widened. He hadn't noticed me laughing at him before, but this time he caught me.
What are you laughing at?
Sorry, I just couldn't help it. Doctor, does removal mean the whole thing?
No, considering the progression, it will be a partial removal.
What does that mean for having children?
There won't be any issues with having children. However, there might be a decrease in reproductive function, and we'll try our best, but the shape might change.
Doctor, just go ahead and remove it all.
What's wrong with you? Why have you been like this?
Kyle, perhaps irritated, tried to stand up and confront me. But his legs gave out due to the shock, and he collapsed to his knees. Despite this, his anger and frustration didn't subside, and he continued to yell at me while looking up from the ground. The doctor, unaware of our plans to divorce, looked perplexed at our exchange. He watched silently as I laughed, holding my stomach, and Kyle, yelling at me. Kyle had planned to leave me for a young and pretty 19-year-old. He must have been looking forward to it. Now, for his pleasure, he has encountered trouble in the most crucial part. He pointed out the increased risk of early childbirth and miscarriage due to my surgery for cervical cancer, but now Kyle also faces risks to his reproductive function.
Doctor, we're getting divorced, so there's no need to contact me about my husband's illness. Well then, you take care now. Make sure you listen to the doctor and take your treatment seriously. I left the hospital feeling amused by the story I had heard. All that's left is to finalize the divorce as quickly as possible. However, the illness caused a bit of a stir in our divorce proceedings. A week after learning about Kyle's illness, my phone rang again. It was Kyle, so I thought it was about the divorce, but it turned out to be something else. Please! Let's pretend the divorce talk never happened. Why all of a sudden? We've come this far, why now? When I told her about my illness, Kelly dumped me. Seriously? My smile widened again. But this time, since it was over the phone, I didn't have to worry about being yelled at for laughing. I had somewhat anticipated this outcome. Kyle tends to go off the rails when it comes to love, and a 19-year-old's love can be impulsive. That's probably why their gears meshed so well together. However, after hearing about Kyle's illness, this Kelly seemed to have regained her composure. It was much like when I was freed from the spell of Kyle's love for an unreasonable reason. At 19, the choices are plentiful, so it was probably easier for her to break free from the spell than it was for me. Having regained her composure, Kelly, like me, appears to have easily discarded Kyle. With this kind of genital illness, no one will marry you. We're not divorced yet. Can't we start over, go back to square one? We're both people with the same concerns about having children, right? Let's support each other and live together going forward. So, you just want any young and pretty girl, huh? Don't say that. Work is tough. Everyone at the store knows about our divorce talks and me dating Kelly. If I'm dumped by both you and Kelly, I'd be too embarrassed to keep working. I don't care about that. Why don't you just find another job then? And don't call me anymore unless it's about the divorce. Wait! Don't be so cold. Please reconsider. I thought it was a pointless call and hung up, ignoring Kyle's pleading words. It's about time to go shopping for dinner. I decided to head to a supermarket that wasn't the one where Kyle works. Afterward, our divorce was finalized. Kelly, who had been dating my ex-husband, dumped him and quit her cashier job at the supermarket. I have no idea where she went. She's probably erased the incident with my ex-husband from her mind and is living her usual life somewhere else. However, unlike a student who can easily reset their environment, my ex-husband doesn't have that luxury. For now, he seems to be continuing to work as a supermarket employee. But, since Kelly apparently spilled everything to everyone around, my ex-husband seems to be working under the scrutiny and gossip of his coworkers. I imagine he'll find the environment too uncomfortable and will probably change jobs eventually. Also, since Kelly was just a girlfriend, a simple goodbye was all it took to end things with her. However, with my ex-husband and me, it was a divorce. Divorces require explaining the reasons to family members. I told my ex-husband's parents everything about why we divorced without holding anything back. Naturally, his parents were furious. The news spread to relatives, and it seems he's feeling out of place not just at work but among family members as well. As a result, my ex-husband has become completely isolated. He will soon start treatment for his illness. Fighting an illness alone must be hard, but it's his own doing, so I hope he manages on his own. I've returned to work after my surgery and am recovering well. I'm still 27, so I'm hopeful for a good encounter in the future. Until then, I plan to focus on my work. I'm not cold, leave me alone. I won't hand this child over to someone bad like you. On the evening when a major cold wave was reported on the news, I was hurrying home. That's when I happened to spot my niece, but something about her seemed off. For some reason, she wasn't wearing her coat, just carrying it in her arms. Looking closer at what she was holding, I was shocked to see it was a baby. Moreover, both my niece and the baby looked unusually thin and their clothes were dirty. In this cold, where are you going with a baby? Unable to ignore my shivering niece,
I offered to let her rest at my house for a bit. As soon as she saw me, she snapped at me angrily.
Shut up! Who says I'm going to your house?
I have a bad relationship with my sister, and her daughter, my niece, dislikes me as well. Still, her rejection was stronger than I expected, which took me aback. But under the cold sky, I felt it was dangerous to leave my niece and the baby alone. Trying to sound as gentle as possible and smiling, I invited my niece to my house, but she firmly refused.
Mom said to never trust you. You're a good-for-nothing.
My niece wouldn't take my hand, ignoring everything I said, and kept resisting with her faltering body. What should I do? How can I help them? While I was internally panicking but still trying to persuade my niece, a car unexpectedly pulled up right beside us. Shocked at what might be happening next, I was astonished to see my husband stepping out of the car. Well, no choice then, I'll have to take her by force. He simply said, and before we knew it, he swiftly picked up my niece, baby and all, and quickly placed them inside the car. Hurry up and get in, he urged me, and as I scrambled into the passenger seat, he started the car somewhat roughly. I protested his forceful action, akin to a kidnapping, but he drove on without a word. The place we eventually arrived at left me breathless. My name is Maple. I'm a typical 29-year-old housewife, born and raised in an ordinary family and married to an ordinary man. I have an older sister by 2 years. I don't recall our relationship being particularly bad during our childhood. Though we had our fights occasionally, we also played together, just an average pair of siblings. However, after becoming adults and getting married, my sister changed. The man she married was what you would call wealthy. He drove a luxury car, wore high-end watches, and was always dressed in stylish suits. Influenced by her husband's values, my sister's spending became extravagant after getting married. She started buying high-end clothes and accessories one after another, and even for daily groceries, she would only shop at upscale supermarkets. Not only that, but she began to look down on me and our parents, calling us poverty-stricken. Moreover, my sister and her husband lived in the town next to ours, and she would boast about her house at every opportunity, which honestly got annoying. Ah, living in an apartment is something only poor people do, how pitiful. If you had married a rich man like I did, you could have lived in a spacious and beautiful house like mine. This house is super comfortable, well worth the $1 million we spent on it. Every time we met, my sister would flaunt her wealth, and my irritation grew until one day I finally snapped.
Enough! Always talking about money, it's so annoying. I'm happy with my house and my life. Stop interfering!
As I screamed at her, red-faced and nearly lunging forward, she snorted and laughed. Oh, you must be jealous, aren't you? Oh no, the jealousy of the poor is so unseemly. Seeing my sister looking down and mocking me, I came to despise her deeply in my heart. Following that incident, my sister's snide remarks escalated. Even at family gatherings at our parents' house, she would deliberately mock me and my husband.
Is that all your husband makes? So little, he must be an incompetent regular employee.
Oh, is that why you have to work part-time? Wow, that's sad.
Your wedding was really cheap, wasn't it? It was almost all family there. In contrast, look at ours. Our ceremony was lavish. We had 100 guests, and the dress, venue, and food were all top-notch. If only you could have married up like I did.
My greedy sister even tried to take my necklace once. It was the only branded item I owned, a treasure gifted by my husband for my birthday. But it seemed my sister couldn't stand me owning a brand item.
How dare a poor person like you wear branded goods? Actually, it doesn't suit you at all, it's a pity for the necklace. It would look much better on me, so hand it over.
In the end, she didn't manage to take the necklace, but she tore the chain, and I quietly cried, feeling as though she had destroyed a memory shared with my husband. After that incident, I started to ignore my sister completely, feeling nothing but discomfort whenever we met. In avoiding her, I also decided to distance myself from her family. However, My brother-in-law was always busy with work and frequently on business trips, so we seldom saw each other anyway. Even when we did meet, in stark contrast to my chatty sister, my brother-in-law was a man of few words, and we hardly ever spoke. Nevertheless, being influenced by my sister who flaunted her wealth, I came to view my brother-in-law as someone who was also likely to boast about being wealthy. My sister and her husband have a 9-year-old daughter named Susan, who also seems to dislike me and my husband. I don't think we've done anything to warrant such disdain from her, but every time we meet, she glares at us, and even when spoken to, she hardly responds. While I've grown distant from my sister's family, and it's not particularly an issue, being treated coldly even by my niece does make me feel a bit sad. So, while I have managed to cut ties with my sister and her family, I often hear about my sister's activities through a neighbor who works part-time at the same place as me. According to them, my sister recently gave birth to her second child. In between being busy with childcare, she seems to be living happily, indulging in her favorite brands. On one peaceful day, having no interactions with my sister, leading a calm life, I encountered an unexpected incident. It was in the dead of winter when the news was all about an incoming severe cold wave. With snow expected to start falling, I headed to the local supermarket to finish up some shopping. It was incredibly cold, as the news had warned, and I was walking briskly with my scarf pulled up to my nose. Then, on my way, I happened to spot my niece, Susan. Before Susan noticed me, I thought about quickly leaving. However, something about her seemed off, catching my attention. Strangely, she wasn't wearing her coat, just holding it in her arms. Looking closer at what she was carrying, I realized it was a baby, to my surprise. Moreover, both Susan and the baby looked unnaturally thin and their clothes were dirty. She was walking with her nose bright red, clutching the coat tightly around the baby as if to protect it from the cold. Clearly struggling and shivering from the cold herself. "Susan, where are you going in this cold with a baby? Come on, at least come to my place to warm up for a bit." I couldn't just ignore her and called out to my niece. Startled by my voice, she jumped and then, upon seeing me, started yelling at me aggressively. "Shut up! Who says I'm going to your house?" Though I knew she disliked me, her vehement rejection took me aback. But under such cold conditions, I felt it was dangerous to leave her and the baby alone. "But you must be cold without your coat on, right? Let's warm up at my place for a bit. Then, I can take you home, okay?" I tried to speak to my niece with the gentlest tone and a smile, but she was adamant in her refusal. "It's not cold, just leave me alone. I have to protect this baby. I won't hand them over to someone bad like you." "I wouldn't hurt you or the baby, I promise." "Lies. Mom said to never trust you." Despite my attempts to reach out, my niece wouldn't grab my hand and refused to listen to anything I said, continuing to resist with her unsteady body. I was internally panicking, wondering how I could possibly help them when suddenly a car pulled up right beside us. To my surprise, it was my husband who got out of the car. "Well, no choice then, I guess I'll have to take you by force." Saying just that, he quickly picked up my niece, baby and all, and placed them in the car. "Maple, hurry up and get in," he urged, and as I rushed into the passenger seat, he started the car with a bit of roughness. "Just stay calm, and I won't harm you. Please, don't make a fuss," he said nonchalantly, not even looking at my niece. As for my niece, perhaps intimidated by my husband's firmness or the suddenness of being brought into the car, she became quiet, a stark contrast to her previous behavior. However, she looked so pale and weak that she seemed like she might collapse at any moment. My husband took us, including my niece and the baby, straight to the hospital. Lost in confusion, my niece and the baby were taken away by a nurse. While waiting for their examination to finish, I asked my husband, "Hey, what's all this about? Why were you there just now? And why rush to the hospital of all places?" His forceful action, almost akin to kidnapping, made me slightly confrontational, but he responded with a wry smile. "It was pure coincidence that I was there, just happened to pass by on my way home from work. I was curious about what you were arguing about, but more than that, Susan and the baby looked terribly pale. I just thought we needed to get them to a warm place right away." He initially thought our home would suffice for warmth, but was alarmed by their unnaturally light weight when he picked them up. Fearing that their poor complexion wasn't just due to the cold but possibly due to illness, he instinctively decided to head not home but to a hospital that could provide appropriate care. Although being suddenly put in the car was a shock, if my husband hadn't shown up and it was just me, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Reflecting on it, his actions, while abrupt, were immensely appreciated. Eventually, it seemed the examination for my niece and the baby was complete, and my husband and I were informed about their condition by the doctor. Apparently, both were suffering from malnutrition and were now receiving 4 drips while resting in warm beds. Aside from malnutrition, there appeared to be no other abnormalities, providing us some initial relief. However, the situation of a 9-year-old wandering outside without any adult supervision, carrying a malnourished infant, raised suspicions of neglect. When we informed the doctor that we were not fully aware of the circumstances, he immediately reported the situation to the police. About 30 minutes later, after the 4 had finished and my niece woke up, we had a chance to talk to her. Whether it was the hospital environment or the warmth of the place that calmed her down, my niece was no longer in her previous state of total refusal and was willing to engage in a normal conversation. According to her, my sister, her mother, was currently away on a trip with friends and not at home. Likewise, my brother-in-law was absent due to his usual business trips. During my sister's absence, she had left the entire care of the baby to my niece with the instruction, "You take care of it." However, without any specific guidance, my niece had been trying to care for the baby by imitating what she had seen her mother do. Amidst this, the baby's complexion turned pale, and it started crying inconsolably. Unable to calm the baby down, my niece decided to take the baby to the hospital. She used her only coat to wrap the baby for warmth and set out for the hospital despite the cold. I stumbled upon my niece during that journey. Had we not found them, my niece and her siblings might have frozen to death by now. Realizing this possibility made me shiver.
That must have been tough. By the way, why did you have such an aversive attitude towards my wife?
My husband casually inquired, and my niece awkwardly averted her gaze as she responded. Apparently, from a young age, my sister had instilled in her the lie that I was a bad person. She told my niece, "I was bullied by my sister since we were kids. She's a bad person, so you must never get close to her." Of course, that was a lie from my sister, but to a child, a mother's words are everything. Without verifying the truth, my niece grew up believing I was the enemy who bullied her mother. However, witnessing how my husband and I earnestly tried to help them this time made her question what she had been told by her mother. "Is what Mom said true? Were you bullying her?" My niece asked with sincere eyes, and I shook my head in response.
"Your mom and I got along when we were kids.
If you don't believe me, you should ask Grandma and Grandpa." Moved by my answer, my niece tearfully bowed deeply.
"I'm sorry for being so defiant when you were just trying to help. I'm sorry for hating you all this time because I believed what Mom said."
Understanding the reason my niece had always disliked us brought me relief, but also a strong anger towards my sister. According to my niece, my sister wouldn't be back until tomorrow, so we decided to take care of my niece and her siblings for the night. After apologizing, my niece seemed to feel lighter and started to engage in normal conversations with us, albeit still a bit awkwardly. Feeling her becoming more comfortable, I asked her about her daily life while we were eating dinner at our house. It turned out that even before the baby was born, my niece often had to stay home alone. During those times, my sister neither prepared meals in advance nor gave her money for food, leaving my niece to go hungry. I felt a simmering anger towards my sister's selfish actions. After ensuring my niece and the baby were fed and had fallen asleep, I called my parents to plan revenge on my sister. The next day, my husband and I took my niece and her siblings to my sister's house. My parents were already waiting there, and my mother rushed to embrace my niece and her siblings the moment she saw them.
You've had a tough time, haven't you? You did well.
Held by my mother, my niece quietly shed tears. Then, we decided to wait for my sister's return. While leaving my niece with my mother, I went around the neighborhood to inquire about my sister's behavior. When I shared that she had been neglecting my niece and the baby to go out, most of the neighbors were outraged and shared their observations of my sister's usual cold treatment towards my niece, including frequently yelling at her. Also, having learned that my sister was expected to return home sometime after noon today, I waited for her with my parents. I tried calling my sister's cell to inform her that we had taken care of my niece overnight and that we were waiting for her return at her house, but as expected, she did not answer. So, ignoring my sister's lack of response, I continued to wait for her return at the entrance of her house, together with my parents. After a while, my sister arrived back home with a few friends.
What? Why are you here? And Mom and Dad too? What do you want?
Upon seeing me, my sister immediately showed her displeasure without trying to hide it. I stared back at her without backing down and said, "Last night, we found Susan walking with the baby and took care of them. I tried contacting you many times, but you never noticed, did you? There should have been numerous missed calls from not only me but also the police and our parents regarding this matter." Pointing this out to my sister, who seemed unaware, prompted her to hurriedly check her phone. Seeing the call log, the color drained from her face. Realizing the situation was serious after seeing missed calls from the police as well, she said, "Oh. I just remembered I have something else to do. So, I'll be going." "Wait. Where do you think you're going?" As she tried to flee, our father grabbed her by the scruff of the neck to stop her. Caught by our father, my sister momentarily tried to struggle and resist but soon gave up and hung her head in resignation. Our parents have always been strict about manners and etiquette, and from a young age, my sister and I were brought up to be well disciplined. I am grateful to my parents for instilling in us the proper attitude and manners one should have as a person, but my sister seemed to struggle with such formalities and often disliked our parents for it, frequently escaping from their discipline. My parents, particularly my father, never overlooked such behavior from my sister, and I believe his attitude towards her was quite strict. Perhaps because of this, even as an adult, my sister still feels intimidated by our father. The sight of our family arguing as soon as my sister returned home, especially with my father catching her trying to flee, caused her friends to become uneasy. In front of them, our parents loudly scolded her for her mistreatment of her grandchildren, including this incident.
How could you go on a trip leaving a 9-year-old and an infant behind? What were you thinking? You say Susan is responsible, but she's still a child. To dump the care of a baby on such a child. Are you even a mother? And it's not just this time, it seems you've left Susan alone to fend for herself many times before, without even preparing meals. Do you even realize you're a mother? If your husband is often away on business trips, it's all the more your responsibility to look after the home and children, isn't it? As my parents revealed more about my sister's behavior, her friends were puzzled, asking, "What do you mean, and didn't you say you were leaving the kids with your parents?" However, witnessing the anger of our parents, the sheepishness of my sister, and the frightened look of my niece peeking out from behind us, they seemed to realize the truth in my parents' words. Now, everyone present was glaring at my sister. As if she couldn't stand the atmosphere, my sister continued to make excuses while trembling and turning pale. It's not like that. I was told my husband was at home yesterday.
Lies.
Then how do you explain everything up to now?
That's. While this exchange was ongoing, the police arrived. "Excuse us, we are from Central Police Station. We received a report last night suggesting your daughters might be subjected to abuse. Could we discuss this matter in more detail?" Oh, wait. Eventually, without much resistance, my sister was taken to the police station. After being taken in, my sister underwent questioning and, being her first offense, was released with just a stern warning. The person who appeared as my sister's guarantor was her husband. It seems our parents had contacted him last night, and he had rushed back from a business trip. While we were taking care of my niece and her siblings at my sister's house, waiting for their return, my sister and her visibly angry husband came back in the evening. Upon seeing her father, my niece joyfully hugged him.
"Daddy! Welcome home!" "Susan, I'm home. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely. I'm sorry."
He hugged my niece tightly, as if making up for the lost time. After putting the children to bed, my husband and I, along with our parents and my sister and her husband, sat down for a serious discussion. When her husband demanded that she tell everything, my sister, still pale, looked down and made excuses, saying, "I wanted a change of pace because of parenting stress."
"Even though it seems like you're always hunting for brand name bags. It's the talk of the neighborhood, you know?"
What? There was no way my sister was mentally exhausted from childcare. Convinced that she was lying, I shared information I had heard from my colleagues. I recounted not only this incident but also episodes of my sister doing as she pleased while her husband was away, as a form of retaliation for her past actions. Hearing this, her husband became furious. "You've been doing such things while I was gone." To prove the truth of my accusations, a quick search of the house revealed a stash of brand name goods hidden in the back of my sister's closet. So, what Maple said is true. Faced with the evidence of the brand name goods, my sister nodded in resignation. According to her confession, she had lied to her husband about the children attending expensive lessons to receive a large sum of money. Moreover, she often neglected the children's care, not only when she was out but also when she was at home.
"I'm so disappointed in you. You always said you were managing the housework and childcare properly.
Let's get a divorce." Having had enough of her, her husband declared his intention to divorce her. Having no excuses left for her misdeeds, my sister quietly accepted the divorce. She couldn't let go of her pride in their mansion, pleading with her husband, "Please leave the house to me." Her husband, who had no interest in the house, agreed to transfer it to her in exchange for a reduction in her share of the other assets. However, the story of what happened spread among the neighbors and her circle of friends, tarnishing her reputation as a woman who mistreated her children and was abandoned by her husband. No one was willing to help my sister. She faced scorn when she went shopping, was rejected when she tried to find part-time work in the neighborhood, and became completely isolated. Eventually, unable to step outside her home and mentally deteriorating, my sister sought help from our parents. However, they had disowned her at the time of her divorce and refused to have any involvement with her. Abandoned by everyone, my sister now lives miserably in the once prized mansion that has turned into a house of clutter. On the other hand, her husband had been seeking to change his work style for the sake of the family. He had applied for a transfer to a department without business trips, hoping to spend more time with his family, and it seemed likely his request would be granted soon. Deciding he couldn't leave the children with their mostly absent mother, he took custody. A decision our parents and I fully supported. The children, especially fond of their father, were thrilled to live with him, saying, "We get to live with Daddy." Without any allies, my sister was left despondent. After the divorce, my brother-in-law and the children moved close to our home. To fill the void of the past lack of interaction, my husband and I sometimes play with the children. Since the incident, the niece has become attached to us, and we occasionally look after her and her sibling when my brother-in-law works late.
The baby is growing up healthy and is at a very cute age. Watching the children grow up, we spend our days feeling happy and fulfilled.